Greetings, family. Welcome to the African Exodus show. I'm your host, Tini Cherie, here to you with a new video. Before we get started with today's show, just as a reminder, if you would like to add yourself to my Telegram group, that's the best way to get notifications anytime that I post a new video. In addition, if you feel led to support this channel, you can do so through Cashapp, also on PayPal. The link to that is down in the description, and also on Patreon. There, I post any type of materials that I also use for the presentation, such as today, I'll post the PowerPoint from today's presentation on my Patreon. So much is going on right now inside of the world, and I really felt led to take a moment and talk about a foundational issue inside of Christianity, one that many people probably don't think about because we look at this as the foundation that we base so much off of, and that is Judaism. So typically in this segment, we talk about coming out of Christianity. That means come out of this religious system that was birthed really inside of Roman Catholicism. This religious system's tentacles reach all throughout the philosophies, the theologies, all throughout the holidays, all throughout so much of the aspects that we have regarded as being biblical, even though they're far from biblical. We have to understand, though, that this origin of a co-optation really goes back from before Christianity was even a religion, before there was ever a pope. This goes back to Judaism. Now we have to understand Judaism is not the followers of Torah necessarily. Followers of Torah, followers of the original word that came from Yahuwah, given to the Yashraelites. The law of Yahuwah that was given to the Yashraelites, this is not Judaism. Now we have to make this distinction in this day and time, because we see a day and time right now where you can see operating the fulfillment of prophecy happening over inside of Palestine in the state of Israel. We see a fulfillment of so many things that are finally coming to fruition. And this is the kingdom of Lucifer, when you kind of see how everything is forming, when you see how the world system is backing up a certain people, you can see that his hand is inside of the entire creation of this system. So for that reason, we have to be clear on where we stand, particularly those of us who are making a real effort to follow the Torah. Many of us are coming out of Christianity and we're following Yahusha, the son of Elohim. We're following him and we're following the way that he showed us to follow the Torah. But when we understand that the Torah has a lot of things that are attached to it that are not in the book, if you are not careful, you will be practicing false teachings along with following Torah. You don't make that distinction, then you can easily be led astray by so many of the same forces that have led people astray inside of Christianity. So let's really go to the foundations of this all. I wanted to spend a lot of time talking about this word, this saying inside of Scripture called the Synagogue of Satan. One that many people have been reflecting on as of recently, as we see a war transpiring, as we see a world system that is backing up a certain nation with impunity. No matter what that nation does, the whole world system will not do anything to stop it from wreaking havoc on the world. And we can see that it's truly, as we're told in Scripture, that Lucifer is the prince of the powers of this world, that truly Lucifer's hand is inside of this entire catastrophe that's happening around the world as we speak. So let's just go to Scripture and spend some time on what the Scripture says. Revelations 2:9, I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander by those who say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Now, of course, the term Jews did not exist at the time of this Scripture. The real word that would have been used is Yahudim. Yahudim meaning one of the descendants of the tribes of Judah. So the real reading of the Scripture would say, and the slander by those who say they are Yahudim and are not, but are of a synagogue of Satan. So there are people who are saying that they descend from the tribe of Judah, but they do not. And instead, they come out of an assembly. That's what synagogue means. We break down the meaning, an assembly of Satan. Similarly, Revelations 3:9 says, behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Yahudim and are not, but lie. I will make them come and bow down before your feet and make them know that I have loved you. Now, it's really criminal how little time we spend talking about the synagogue of Satan inside of the institutions, inside of Christianity, inside of churches. We really spend very little time talking about the fact that there's a scripture explicitly telling us that there are a people who are saying that they are Yahudim, yet those people are in fact not. Not only are they not, they are being led by Satan, Lucifer, Prince of Lies. They're being led by him. You would think that having a distinction on who those people are would be paramount inside of a faith system that says that they follow Yahusha. This is his words. He's the one saying it. Yet many people have ignored that scripture, kept reading other parts of the scripture, emphasized other parts that they want to emphasize, and de-emphasize parts that they want to de-emphasize. Instead, we see a alliance with Christianity and Zionism. We see an alliance, this belief that these people are who they say they are. We see many people bowing at the feet of those who claim that they are Yahudim. This is obviously a way to manipulate the believers who say that they're believers of Yahusha, manipulate them into capitulating to a religious system that is not from Yah, to a people's ways, to their politics, to their governmental structure that is not deemed holy by the Most High. So we've been manipulated. Many of us have been manipulated. At one time, I was manipulated by this same system, which is why we have to root it out and deal with it. Now, I want to deal more with the history today, not so much deal with the implications of the scripture. I want us to kind of start to sift through history. When did this institution begin? We will make the logical explanation, obviously, that the system has not ended. So when did it begin? It had to have begun, obviously, during the exile of the Yahudim out of the Holy Land. So we know this, by the way, because of scripture giving us details of there being a separation between the Levites, who were the original priesthood, and another people. So let's actually go to Yahusha himself when he says inside of Luke 10, Yahusha replied and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he encountered robbers, and they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. And by coincidence, a priest was going down on that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. Now, something that might not have stood out to you before is the fact that there's a distinction being made between a priest and a Levite. Of course, if you know the scriptures, the Old Testament or the Torah, you know that the Levites were the priesthood. So why is it a distinction between a priest who first goes by and continues on his way, and then a Levite, a blood Levite? What we're being shown here is the fact that at the time of Yahusha, that there was a distinction between the priesthood of the Torah, the priesthood of the law, and a new priesthood. A new priesthood by the time of Yahusha is put in place. A new priesthood is ruling, and that priesthood is the same priesthood that is the co-optation of the original priesthood. So of course, this means that this had to happen in the Babylonian exile, when the Yahudim were taken into exile into Babylon. So a few things about the exile that you should know. Number one, I want you to understand that the exile was not the complete nation of the Yahudim. That has to be emphasized. In fact, let's talk about the actual numbers according to scripture. So according to 2 Kings 24:12 through 16, it says, then he led into exile all the people of Jerusalem and all the commanders and all the valiant warriors, 10,000 exiles and all the craftsmen and the smiths. None were left except the poorest of the land. So this is the initial exile. What we're told in this scripture is that 10,000 exiles were taken to Babylon. Now it has to be emphasized. This is not a lot of people. Whenever you look at the breakdowns of the numbers of people who were inside of Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda, far more than 10,000 people, right? This is, as it says, a certain class of people. Again, it says that these were the commander of all the valiant warriors, 10,000 exiles, craftsmen, and smiths. Also inside of Jeremiah 52:28-30, it says, these are the people who Nebuchadnezzar took into exile. In the 7th year, he took 3,023 Jews, or Yahudim. In the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar, 832, from Jerusalem. In the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, took into exile 743 Yahudim, and there were 4,600 people in all. So we have to come away with the conclusion that during the Babylonian exile, although it was the powerful, probably the administrators, the people who were of influence inside of Yahuda, the vast majority of the Yahudim were still present inside of Yahuda, the tribe, right? So this is important to emphasize because a certain level of people are going to go into exile. And when those people, some who are going to come back, not all come back, some people, it's evidence they actually stay in Babylon. They love Babylon so much and they want to integrate into Babylon. So a problem that many of us have today. But when some do come back and they actually are coming back in sincerity, we see also that some are coming back who are also coming with a co-opted version of the original truth. So we have to understand what happens inside of the Babylonian exile that actually turns the people of Yahuda away from Yahuwah. So we're going to biblicalarchaeology.org. It says, according to the Bible, notes Lori E. Pierce, King Jehoiachin was given special treatment even over other imprisoned kings. Moreover, uniform rations lists discovered in Nebuchadnezzar's South Palace in Babylon showed that captive kings and officials, high officials, received monthly rations of grain and oil. The lives of non-royal Yahudites, too, are preserved inside of Babylonian records. Next to Nippur contains the names of Yahudites who served as witnesses in the land contracts. The Yahudite identity of the witnesses is revealed by their Yahwistic names, named from the Israelite divine Yahuwah. The text contains the business activities of a family whose patriarch was an entrepreneur named Marusu. Since witnesses to contracts usually have the same social status as those engaged in the transaction, it would suggest, Lori E. Pierce argues, that a number of Yahudites were as successful as the Marusu family. So what this tells us is, even when the scriptures were written, come out of her, saying come out of Babylon, that even the real Babylonian empire that existed at the time, many people were living comfortably. Many people were not in angst. Now, yes, some people were in devastation, particularly the ones who were left inside of Yahuda, but many people basically assimilated into the society. Many people joined in Babylon, and many people did not have an unfavorable experience by their own estimation. So Jewish Virtual Library also goes into this. It says, while the Assyrian deportation of Israelites in 722 BC resulted in a complete disappearance of Israelites, the deported Yahudim, or Jews, formed their own community in Babylon and retained their religion, practices, and philosophies. Some, it would seem, this is important to emphasize, adopted the Chaldean religion, where they named their offspring after Chaldean gods. But for the most part, the community remained united in faith in Yahweh. So this is important to emphasize. That's where you start seeing the Chaldean or the Babylonian gods, their names start to be attached to different cultural features inside of Judaism. You will see this with some of the naming of the months, for example. You will see this with some of the adoption of Ishtar. You will start seeing this over and over again, that the Babylonian religious system is attaching itself to the people who are saying that they follow the Torah. Now, of course, we have to ask, okay, are all of these people Yahudim? I believe initially, obviously, there was a community of people who were Yahudim. We know later on that there are converts, and the converts are going to come in and really take the hold of the entire religious system, as we see happen over time. But at this early stage, this is the same Yahudim who rebelled against Yahuwah, who did not follow his laws, who were following false gods. If you think that all of them had a reality check and just suddenly wanted to follow Torah, no, many of these Yahudim were just as willing to mix up the Torah with Babylonian beliefs. and pretend as if it was from Yahuwah, and pretend as if it was actually something that was sanctioned by the law. They were doing so because this is what they did previously. So let's read some more about some of the religious attachments that these Yahudim were making while they were in exile. So this is Jewish Virtual Library again. It says, while the reformers were busy trying to purify the Hebrew religion, the Persian religion, Zoroastrianism, creeped into it among the common run of people. Why this happened is anyone's guess, but Zoroastrianism offered a worldview that both explained the mollified tragedies such as the exile. It seemed that the Hebrews adopted some of this worldview in the face of the profound disasters they had weathered. Zoroastrianism, which had been founded in the 7th century BC by a Persian prophet named Zarathustra or Zoroaster in his Greek name, was a dualistic, eschatological, and apocalyptic religion. The universe is divided into two distinct and independent spheres. One, which is light and good, is ruled by a deity who is the principle of light and good. The other, dark and evil, is ruled by a deity who is the principle of dark and evil. The whole of human and cosmic history is an epic struggle between these two independent deities. At the end of time, a final battle between these two deities and all those ranged on one side or the other would permanently decide the outcome of this struggle. The good deity, Ahura Mazda, would win this final battle, apocalyptic battle, and all the gods and humans on the side of good would enjoy the eternal bliss. Now, this dualism is something that I think we're seeing happening right now as we speak. Whenever we speak about people seeing the world divided into two gods, you have this God and the other God, right? What do we talk about with Luciferians? They believe that Lucifer was the good one and Yahuwah was the evil one, right? Well, this attachment to this idea draws this distinction. You can follow after a material God who's going to help you reap good things, the things that you deem as good, while warring against the other God who you want to deem as not giving you good things, not showing you the good materials of this world. I believe this is one of the early infiltrations where you could see this idea of following after not just a different religious system, but actually having adherence to a Luciferian type of ideology where you can conflate God as being evil and you can conflate Lucifer with being good. This is where you see happening inside of early Judaism, but also in many other aspects of the world systems and religious systems that people are following, particularly inside of pagan societies. So this new idea of dualism, there's not one God, there's two gods, and you're going to follow the God who does what you deem is good, right? This new following happens at a time where you're also seeing this new respect and reverence for rabbinical teachings. People who are coming and calling themselves fathers, people who are calling themselves rabbis. And what did Yahusha say? Do not call anyone rabbi. Why? Because this whole idea that I will bow to you as the holder of knowledge, and I will not seek to have a knowledge of Yahuwah for myself. That one is going to trip so many people up. So many people who think that they're actually following the right way. So many people who are trying, some in good conscience, to actually follow the right way. They want to rely on people, on human beings. They want to rely on them instead of actually doing the hard work. And some of it is not hard because, as he says, my burden is light. But the work of reading the scriptures and actually knowing Yahuwah for yourself, because people are not willing to go through those motions, they can be deceived by false teachers. Now, I want to read about rabbinical Judaism. We have to understand that this is really the early co-optation taking form into an institutional creation, as we said, a synagogue of Satan, an assembly of Satan. So this is from religiousfacts.com. Babylonian captivity was a watershed moment in the history of Judaism. It marks the beginning of the end of the First Temple period and the start of the Rabbinic period. Prior to the captivity, the Jews were a unified people with a common religion based on the worship of Yahweh at the temple in Jerusalem. After the captivity, they were dispersed throughout the Babylonian Empire and their religion became more diverse, with different groups developing different interpretations of Judaism. One of the most significant changes to Judaism in the wake of the captivity was the rise of the rabbinic authority. Prior to the captivity, the Jewish religious establishment was the priesthood, which was based in the temple. But after the destruction of the temple in 586 BCE, the priests were no longer able to perform their functions, and the authority of the rabbis, who were based in the synagogues, began to grow. The rabbis started to develop their new interpretations of Jewish laws and customs, which were collected in the Mishnah and also the Talmud. They also started to develop new traditions, such as the observance of Shabbat and the study of the Torah. These new interpretations and traditions helped to transform Judaism into a religion that could be practiced anywhere, not just in Jerusalem. The Babylonian captivity also had a profound impact on the Jewish understanding of God. Prior to the captivity, the Jews believed that Yahweh was the exclusive God of the Israelites and that they were his chosen people. But after the captivity, many Jews began to see Yahweh as the universal God of all people. This new understanding of God helped to create a more inclusive form of Judaism that was open to people of all backgrounds. In other words, this is when Judaism, or Torah, whatever you want to call it, this is when it becomes a convert religion. Overwhelmingly a convert religion, with a small bit of the people who were actually the original Yahudim being the practices and the adherents. So this is an important thing to emphasize. Again, we have to keep in mind, most of the Yahudim are inside of Yehuda. A small segment are inside of the Babylonian Empire. Now they have this religious system that's Babylonian, that has different Babylonian beliefs mixed into it. And now this system becomes the foundation for Torah according to this new found rabbinical understanding. So this rabbinical understanding is going to lead many of the children of Yasharel astray. And this is what we see happening at the time of Yahusha. It's no coincidence that Yahusha comes back at a time when the Levite priesthood has been completely destroyed, and you have a new priesthood pretending to be the authentic priesthood sanctioned by Yahuwah. You have this Pharisaic priesthood, and also you have the Sadducees. You have these people who are saying that they are the new authorized teachers, that they are the new authorized rabbis. Yahusha comes to disrupt that system from its foundation, to uproot it and say that this system does not come from Yah. Study the word. Look at the word. Look at how it was actually practiced. You people who say that you are one thing, you actually are not that thing. In fact, I want to close out with one more scripture, because let's emphasize that Yahusha was very clear on who these Pharisees were. He says in John 8:44, you are of your father, the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he tells a lie, he speaks from his own nature, because he is a liar and the father of lies. He told this directly to the Pharisees in an exchange. So let this be a reminder to us of what we are dealing with. Yahusha has told us there is a people who are passing themselves off as being Yahudim, but in fact, their father is Lucifer. Their father is the devil. And for us to move forward inside of this end time season without being deceived, we have to make distinctions between what has been fed and taught to us from this false institution and from what the word actually says. So we're going to start getting into all of that. I do just want to emphasize one more point, and I will definitely hit more on this next time. We have to understand anything that's not in the scripture, anything that is not directly referenced in the scripture. As we said, most of the Yahudim, they were not inside of Babylon, right? So when we see new things added, new traditions, new understandings of the scripture that are not reflected directly in scripture, just have a mind that says that's probably not from the authentic word of Yahuwah, because it's not written there. It's probably a tradition that was added later on. So we'll go through some of those traditions. I just want that to be in the backup of your mind, because many of the things with Judaism that we have adopted, some people just trying to get back to the Torah are adopting things that are not found in the scripture, adopting understandings not found in scripture, adopting calendars not found in scripture. So we'll start getting more into these different subjects. But for now, I thank you all for watching, and God willing, I'll see you in the next.
Had its first organizational expressions in 1897 in Basel, Switzerland, in Europe. Here was a man by the name of Theore Herzel, H-E-R-Z-L. He was the founder of Zionism. He said that he was going to find the state that God promised the Jews. Listen to this very carefully. This man, Herzel, was an atheist. He believed that there was no God. He said God did not exist. Now, how is it the man who believes that God does not exist is going to find a state that God promised to his chosen people? I'm telling you, this man is Satan in disguise. Zionism is a satanic movement. It is devil.
Christians don't get right is that Judaism is not the religion of the Old Testament, because after the Jews rejected Christ, and before that also, but in the intervening 2,000 years, they have developed a completely different religion, whether it's mystical Judaism with the Kabbalah or whether it's legalistic Judaism with the Talmud, and there's tension and fusion, and there's an interplay between those things. But they have developed a completely different religion, and Christians have it in their mind like you've got the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the Jews just got off before the New Testament. They got off at their stop, and so they're the first episode and we're the sequel. But it's not true, because they continued to develop a religion, and so you could ask somebody, is the Zohar a Christian text? I mean, how does that have any relation to Christianity? The Zohar came in the Middle Ages. They say it goes back to Moses or Abraham, but the Zohar's got nothing to do with us. And the Talmud didn't come until 400 years after Christ. And they say that, the rabbis have been debating the Mishnah during the time of Christ, but they didn't put it down and they didn't codify it, and, they didn't complete it until 1,000 years later, practically. So Christians just really have no idea what they're dealing with. Even, Candace Owens brought this up with Rabbi Shmuley. This Rebbe of the Chabad Lubavitchers, Rabbi Schneerson, who they worship. And Schneerson is considered a messiah, and the Lubavitchers are everywhere. Kushner's a Lubavitcher. Millet is a Lubavitcher. The Lubavitchers have an audience with Putin and Netanyahu, and they were in the White House. And Schneerson believed that we're not human beings. He believes that non-Jews have no souls and we're not human beings, we're cattle, and we should worship the Jews because they're the ones that, according to the Kabbalistic belief, they're supposed to collect the shards and protect the divine spark, and it's all this nonsense. And Christians just have no idea about any of that.
Antagonism between the Talmud and Jesus. The Talmud attacks him everywhere it can, even his mother. Mary, the Talmud says, was a whore who mated with carpenters. She who was the descendant of princes and governors played the harlot with carpenters. It naturally followed that the scribes declared Christ to be a bastard. In its article on Jesus, the Jewish Encyclopedia says that Jewish writings defame Christ. It is the tendency of all these sources to belittle the person of Jesus by ascribing to him illegitimate birth, magic, and a shameful death. Jesus, according to this article, was considered one of the 3 worst enemies of Judaism who came to an ignoble end. The Talmud says they subjected him to 4 deaths: stoning, burning, decapitation, and strangling. The Talmud also says he is now in hell, punished with boiling hot excrement. What is Christ's advice as he speaks to us out of hell? The Jewish Encyclopedia quotes Jesus as telling us above all to bless the Jews. He says, "Further their well-being, do nothing to their detriment. Whoever touches them touches even the apple of his eye." Christians, as followers of the false prophet Jesus, also deserve death. The Jewish Encyclopedia again recaps the Talmud's position. A Gentile observing the Sabbath deserves death. The testimony of a Christian was not admitted in evidence in Jewish courts, and an Israelite who found anything belonging to one who was a Christian was forbidden to return it to him.
The Pharisees, through the Talmud, thus gave the Jews an ethic which encouraged bigotry and isolation.
Most of these Christians are not familiar with the Talmud, Zohar, and Kabbalah, and where this 613 mitzvot comes from and what they're all about. So I started to study what they're about and what the Talmud teaches, and I noticed that there is actually a plan, there is a plot, and that's a plot against Christianity. Let me bring you one of the books here, The Secret Doctrine in Israel by Waiti. And what it explains is the basically secret doctrine of the Zohar, what is behind Zohar. And you have to understand that the soul of the Talmud is Zohar, and the soul of Zohar is Kabbalah. But in this particular book, I just want to read you a little bit what got me understanding what the plot is against Christianity. It says here, according to the Midrash Talpigoth, the Messiah will bring eternal peace, which of course was understood by the Israelites as peace for Israel, plus that which may follow extermination for all who did not enter by conversion into the house of Jacob. So basically what they teach is that if Gentiles or Christians do not attach themselves to the Jews, they will be exterminated. And of course, we are well known for our Noahide laws that we brought this to a light. So then you go to Talmud and you start reading what is the plan for Gentiles. You see, Judaism is a two-tier system. Judaism puts the wall of partition back. It's the Jews and non-Jews. And according to Judaism, non-Jews are different species. Now, they are building their own kingdom. It's the Jewish earthly kingdom with headquarters in Jerusalem, where their AI Messiah will be, and they're going to rule the world through the law. You know, it will be international, one law. One religion, basically, Luciferian religion. So yes, in a Talmud, this is the Jewish earthly kingdom, and this is why the Zionist Christianity have embraced Kiliism, which is a focus on earthly millennial kingdom. And this is how Jews and Christians are getting together, and Christians are so deceived, thinking that they are working for the good thing, for the Jews, like they're helping the Jews. The Jews are supposed to get this kingdom. Yet this is Zoharic doctrine, and it does not have good intention. As I said, that they want to rule the world, they want to get Gentile riches, and they want to rule the Gentiles. They don't consider Gentiles fully human beings. And in fact, as an end game, they have this strange doctrine, Adam Kadmon doctrine, which Adam Kadmon originally was, according to Zohar and Talmud, he was androgynous. It was male-female in one body, and this is why you see this transgender agenda today, and there are laws, very serious laws, passing in Alberta, Canada.
Is Zionism behind the transgender movement?
Yes, it gets its origin in Zionism, and it gets its origin in the Talmud, Zohar, and Kabbalah. It's a Kabbalistic doctrine of Adam Kadmon, which is eventually they have this doctrine called Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. So how do they want to repair the world? They want to bring it to the original. Who was original Adam? He was androgynous. So now they're putting specific things in food and drink, and they're basically their end game is to make humans that on earth that will survive whatever it is they're bringing androgynous.